What's going on, guys? This is DaWoblefet, and welcome to round 5 of the North American Players Cup for regional qualifiers. Again, this is Swiss rounds. I am playing against my opponent, Jeremy Odena, who goes on Twitter by, I think, like JO12. I know the name Jeremy Odena. I know he did pretty well. I think he won one of the Opens at Worlds. I'm pretty sure he won one of the Opens there. So I know he's a fine player. I think he's from the Northeast, if I also recall correctly. That's just going off of memory, though. But my opponent has a cool team. Very interesting team, though. So they have 2 Prankster support Pokemon. The Thundurus is a pretty standard, Thunderbolt Area Impulse set. But the Grimmsnarl is much less standard. Typically, what you'll see from Grimmsnarl is like Screens, Light Clay, Spirit Break, and then usually a speed control move, so either Thunder Wave or Scary Face. But my opponent has none of those moves. They've got, well, I guess they have Spirit Break, but they have Trick, Wagging Tail, or I guess in this case, Full Incense. And they've got Fake Tears to combo off with their Celesteela. That's the only thing it really combos with. Like, I guess it technically combos with Thundurus as well. But that's really interesting to me that he has Fake Tears just for the Celesteela, and then he's like Taunt. So he's got double Prankster Taunt, which isn't great for my my Spectrier by any means. But my Spectrier doesn't really need to do too much. Like, it'd be nice to Will-O-Wisp the Garchomp, and maybe like taunt his Pokemon. But otherwise, Snarl is usually pretty good. Snarl is going to be great at weakening the Garchomp and the Thundurus. And if he has to waste turns taunting against my Spectrier to stop taunt, that's always a good thing too. The Garchomp also lacks Sword Stance. It has Dragon Claw instead. So it's just 3 attacks Garchomp. So that's a little bit better for me. I prefer seeing that. Makes a little bit more sense without screens as well. But yeah, in this matchup, this is the first time that I feel comfortable bringing Moltres all game. Moltres looks really good here. Moltres walls the Grimmsnarl and the Thundurus. Not in the sense that it takes no damage from them, but if they decide to attack the Moltres, it's technically going to be a good thing for me because they'll activate my weakness policy, and none of their other attacks can hit my Moltres, so that's really good for me. Also, Moltres does very well versus the Rillaboom. Incineroar can't hit for a lot of damage, so Celesteela and Garchomp are definitely the big things that I have to worry about here. And both of them, I guess not technically Garchomp, but both of them are probably going to want to max in order to deal with Moltres, so that leaves my Clefairy in a great spot. I'm able to redirect away their attacks and do other stuff that's annoying to them. Regieleki is also going to be great here because the Celesteela is Assault Vest, so if I ever catch the Celesteela on a max, it won't be able to threaten my Regieleki for much damage. And that'll be good for me. But the Garchomp is somewhat scary. The Garchomp is definitely the thing I'm most concerned about going into this match, so... My opponent also has the Ray Riz in-game name, so I'm fighting Ray Rizzo here, I suppose. I do always think it's funny when players put their cart name as a former top player or a top player, so that way, like if they're playing you on Battlespot, they're like, "Oh, is this the real Ray Rizzo?" or something like that. But I don't know. I feel like you'd want to put Wolf anymore, or like Cybertron, because they're the ones who actually play. Like I don't know if Ray has play any sort of shield, but regardless, this is a great lead for me. My opponent can't hardly do anything to me. Now, they could Dynamax their Celesteela and attack my Moltres, but that is incredibly risky, because not only do you know that I have Snarl, which would weaken the Celesteela special attack, but if I Dynamax myself, then you would be triggering my weakness policy boost, so that would be just terrible for you. So my opponent just goes for the Taunt and Spectrier, stopping me from going for my own Taunt, but I just click Snarl. The Celesteela does not Dynamax, which means that it won't be able to pressure my Moltres this turn, which means I got a free Nasty Plot off. Like, the worst thing that they can do is Flash Cannon my Moltres for some damage, and that's going to do just pitiful amounts. If they decide to, like, Meteor Beam and get a special attack boost, that doesn't matter either, because they'll be locked in on the next turn since this isn't Power Word. This is Assault Vest. And so Flash Cannon does a very low amount of damage to my Spectrier, and this is a great spot for me. They don't really have very much to defeat my Moltres anymore. And I remember it was at this point. You see me pausing, thinking here. Like, I obviously want to go for Max Airstream into the Grimmsnarl. At this point, I actually hadn't realized that I was Hurricane on my Moltres, and not and not Air Slash, because as you'll recall, I accidentally locked in Hurricane. I had got my Moltres ready with Hurricane, and it was so late at night that I didn't even realize that I had the wrong ability, or not the wrong ability, but the wrong move on it. So definitely embarrassing there, but Hurricane is actually a little bit nicer here in this particular situation because it's unlikely that I'm going to be clicking my Hurricane out of max, except maybe against the Garchomp if I want to deal some damage to it, but I probably want to click Fiery Wrath against it if I can't help it. And in this kind of position, it's really great because the extra damage is going to be nice at ensuring that I get KOs. Potentially, I may not otherwise. I'm not exactly sure what kind of spread this Grimmsnarl runs. Like I said, it's not screen, so it wouldn't be running, I don't think, max Spadef, but it doesn't have like Fake Out either, so it doesn't really need to run a lot of speed either. So I'm not really sure exactly what it runs. They do decide to trick the lagging tail with full incense onto my Spectrier, which is totally fine. Again, they can't do anything to this Moltres, which is sitting at +2 right now with no damage on it, and with weakness policy still intact. So the Shadow Ball damage on Incineroar is also pretty nice. So normally max Air Slash does about like 85 to, or I think it does like 85 min to standard-ish Incineroar. So that's like careful with a little bit of bulk on it. But Hurricane does more like 90, so that just increases the probability that this Incineroar will actually go down to this +2 max Airstream, which is great. And the Celesteela, although it can Dynamax here, it's it's going to be Dynamaxing a little bit too late. It's got to get multiple Airstream boosts in order to outspeed my Regieleki, and I'm probably going to have the opportunity to max Darkness, whatever their final Pokemon is. If they switch Incineroar out, the only thing that can resist that attack is Thundurus. I didn't think it was very likely they would bring both Thundurus and Grimmsnarl to a game. That would make you very, very reliant on a Celesteela max, which would be not especially great versus my Regieleki, so they do decide to max their Celesteela though, which is fine by me. I don't expect them to go for max Steel Spike into my Spectrier. I think they want to go for max Airstream in order to get extra speed boosts. My Clefairy can live a max Steel Spike. It depends on what kind of damage this Celesteela does to me. They do go for the max Airstream, which is nice. It means I get an instance of damage against them. And I remember I was calculating this. This looked like it was modest Celesteela, but it definitely wasn't modest max special attack. So that's even better for me. The less special attack a Celesteela has, the more likely that my Clefairy will be able to live a max Steel Spike if it needs to. So that could potentially come up in later games. And now my opponent is in just such an awful position. Their Garchomp will mate to a +2 max Darkness, so I don't have to go for the max Hurricane, which would be a little bit stronger. But max Darkness is nice because it puts a special defense drop on the Celesteela, which should guarantee the knockout with Regieleki later. So my opponent does go for the Protect with their Garchomp, likely trying to put a speed boost on it, but since I already have 2 speed boosts with Moltres, 1 speed boost on Garchomp will not be enough, because my Moltres is, I think, what is it, 138, 139, something like that, which is going to be faster than Garchomp's max speed, which would be like 169 times 1.5, so I'm going to be way faster than it. So they do go for the Airstream into Clefairy, which is, again, they really want the Airstream boosts, just so they can actually outspeed my stuff. But it doesn't matter very much at this point. I do have a 3 Follow Me here. Now, the Celesteela can go for another max Airstream that would knock out the Clefairy and put the Garchomp faster. But it's going to be, like I said, they have to, at that point, they would have to flinch my Moltres. And then I would get a +4 attack off. It would be bad news for them. So, I can't remember if at this point, I think I was thinking about sacking my Spectrier because it wasn't going to do anything at this point in the game, and Clefairy would be nice later on. And I didn't expect them to go for Max Rock because, again, Max Rock is really risky against the Clefairy, you might not knock it out, and you really want to go for that last max airstream. I was very confident they wanted to go for the last max airstream, because then they have a shot of outspeeding my Regieleki, depending on how much investment they've got in speed. So max Phantasm, or excuse me, max flying doesn't even knock out my Spectre. And I do remember at this point, unfortunately, I stopped recording the footage. I don't remember why, but yeah, I do win this game with Regieleki in the back, and with Fiery Wrath. There's no way my opponent could win, especially with a full HP Moltres. So unfortunately, the game footage is going to cut off there, but we can go ahead and get into the second game. So I did win that. I did win that first game. Like I say, it was just basically a formality at that point. I don't even remember if Jeremy may have forfeited at that point, because there's just no way that you're going to be able to break through all of my Pokemon. So this game, even though Moltres did so well, I wanted to mix it up and try Landorus, because Landorus would also be very good against what they brought. It's not especially great versus the Celesteela, but I've still got my Regieleki to deal with the Celesteela. And Landorus does very well against the Garchomp, whereas Moltres and Regieleki don't necessarily do as well against Garchomp. My opponent mixes it up a little bit. They lead with the Grimmsnarl and the Incineroar. So they are pressuring me with a Fake Out and Trick Play. I don't want my Landorus to get a full instance. That's why I plan on maxing this game, so I don't want to let Landorus just be crippled straight away, not only from losing its item offensively, but also losing its speed. The speed is definitely something that's going to be pretty critical in this matchup, so I switch hard into my Spectre, as my opponent just goes for a relatively safe Taunt and Parting Shot. That kind of also covers what I was planning on doing. The worst punish that I could do there would be something like a Follow Me and a Swords Dance. If I do Protect Swords Dance, I block the Taunt, I get back to neutral. If I Follow Me, I get to +1, but they can switch back into their Incineroar right after. So a really nice play there, nice middle ground. It doesn't blow their Trick play yet, so that's good for them. And my opponent gets Grimmsnarl Celesteela in. However, this time I know they have Incineroar, so that means that they brought... Or, well, it doesn't mean anything. That means if they brought Garchomp, they brought the same Pokemon as last time. And that seemed the most likely to me, given especially what the pressure of Regieleki would be able to do to them. So I go ahead and I just switch out my Clefairy into my Regieleki. Regieleki will be able to take this combination attack of Fake Tears and Max Steel Spike. And then next turn I can go for a Volt Switch into the Celesteela with Certainty. So my opponent instead actually goes for the Fake Tears into the Spectre with the Snarl on the Celesteela, putting it at -1 special attack. That means that the Splash Cannon will not knock me out, but it will do a sizable chunk of damage. And as you can see, it does about half. So not the most impressive damage that I could have possibly done. And now at this point, I do have a free Volt Switch, but I have to figure out which one to do it into. So my opponent is almost certainly going to be switching into their Garchomp, which also kind of makes sense for why they didn't want to max their Celesteela. They would have guaranteed taking a Snarl there. So the Fake Tears would have helped them make it up, but they would have been at -2 for sure at the end of that interaction. Not a great look for them, so in hindsight, it makes a lot of sense for them not to max there. And so now I want to go for the Volt Switch. I want to make sure that I hit the right target, though. Again, I don't mind if one of these gets tricked a full instance. I don't mind as much. I mean, it'd be nice if they tricked the Spectre, but I don't think that's very likely. So they just decided to go for Taunt this time, which isn't great. It means that I do basically nothing with my Spectre this turn. I do get the Volt Switch off into Grimmsnarl, though. Do about half, which is good. And now I can put in my Lando. But I've still got to be very careful. I'm trying to bait them to go for their Trick. I really want them to go for their Trick. I really want to be able to max with my Lando later on. And ideally, I would like to have my Regieleki still have its Magnet as well, so that way I can hit the Celesteela too. So I go into my Lando here, partly because it puts an Intimidate down on the Garchomp, and partly because I really want him to trick my Lando this turn. if I can force him to trick my Lando, then I can switch out Lando back and hopefully get something out of it. So, because I need to switch out my Lando, I don't really want to stay in with my Spectre either. It's not doing very much on the field right now. If I Shadow Ball the Garchomp, that's going to do very low damage. They could also switch into their Incineroar, because at this point, since Spectre is taunted, it can't really do much to either Incineroar or the Grimmsnarl. So I want to get Spectre off the field, but I also need to get Lando off the field. So I'm inclined to double switch here. Now my opponent does have the option of just hard switching their Grimmsnarl into Incineroar, which wouldn't be great, but again, if they max their Garchomp right now, they're at -1. So I basically got damage control on their potential maxes, which is great for me. Now they do switch out their Garchomp into Incineroar, so I lose the Intimidate War there. If I had switched out in the other order, if I had switched my if I had switched my Clefairy into Landorus, well, again, I guess it doesn't matter because I'm switching out my Lando anyway. Yeah. What am I going on about there? Yeah, get my turns mixed up. I'm like thinking ahead. So my opponent does go for the trick. It does hit it into Regieleki, and that's not great. It does mean I lose my Magnet, which unfortunately also means that my Volt Switch will not KO this Grimmsnarl here. But I do think it's pretty likely that I can get a Volt Switch off on Grimmsnarl. My opponent, since they just tricked my Full Incense onto my Regieleki, I expect them to Parting Shot into their Garchomp because that's very safe for them. But they make a nice play here, cover me wanting to go for the Volt Switch into the Grimmsnarl. And now I am very far behind. This Parting Shot into Regieleki is not good for me. If I had gotten the Volt Switch off onto the Incineroar, or into the Incineroar slot, either hitting Grimmsnarl or hitting Celesteela for good damage, then I can go into Lando, and then I have the pressure of Follow Me, Swords Answer, Helping Hand, Max Airstream, so that would have been a lot better. But now I'm in a really tough spot. My opponent here is pretty free to go for like Earthquake and Max Steel Spike, or even Max Airstream into my Clefairy, and this is just awful. My Spectre has already taken damage. My Lando Steel is healthy, but I'm in the back against the wall kind of situation. I really need them to, like this is bad. If I switch out my Pokemon, then they're gonna just take a ton of damage. Like if I switch out my Regieleki into Lando and like try to protect or something, I'm gonna and they hit my Lando, that's just as bad as just staying in. So at this point, I kind of go for broke. And so even without the Magnet, I decided to max the Full Incense Regieleki in order to try to make up for what's going on here. Now, with the Dynamax, I will be able to survive this combination attack of Earthquake and Max Steel Spike that's aimed at Regieleki. And so I'm hoping now, with the Helping Hand boost, that I'm able to basically knock out the Celesteela, or else put it into KO range of something else. If I am able to knock out the Celesteela, I would be trading Max for Max effectively, because Garchomp would be able to Earthquake me on the next turn, but I might be able to do something with that, as opposed to trying to wait to max with Lando later, because maxing Lando into Celesteela is probably not going to win me the game. So I just go for broke with his Helping Hand. I'm like, okay, I need something great to happen here. And my opponent uses Dragon Claw. I'm like, oh, nice, they predicted my Lando to come in. I'm like, this is perfect. So I take like the least amount of damage I possibly could. It just like does go into Clefairy. I'm like, oh, that's not great. But then I leave with 1 health. If they had gone for Earthquake, it would have put my Clefairy into KO range. So this denies them a Beast Boost, which is super important. And now I get to go for the Max Electric into the Celesteela. And I'm like, oh. Yeah, that doesn't do enough. So this is bad. I kind of just screwed myself with that play now, because my opponent just has too many options available to them. They can max move into my Clefairy, which would guarantee a knockout. Earthquake is going to do a ton of damage to my Regieleki now that I've kind of blown my cover. I have to stay in with my Clefairy or switch into Lando in order to cover that. And again, if I switch in my Lando on a Max Steel Spike Well, I guess at this point it really doesn't matter too much, because then at least they're not attacking my Garchomp, but I can't afford to take a lot of damage anywhere. And so my opponent does just this time go for the Earthquake. I'm going to hit my Regieleki for a ton of damage. I do survive thanks to the Friend Guard. I would not have survived without that. I could have switched into Intimidate, that would have worked, but my opponent follows it up very smartly with a max Rockfall. And that covered, I think, probably about everything. If I switch into Lando there and follow me, they guaranteed get damage down. If I do the play that I made, Regieleki goes down and Clefairy takes sand damage. It probably didn't cover literally every option I had, but it covered the one that I went for very effectively. They still get a Beast Boost, and they get 2 KOs. Now, the Celesteela hasn't gotten any speed boosts yet, but I haven't done enough damage to it or the Garchomp in order to actually, I think, be able to win this game out. So recall that they have Incineroar and Grimmsnarl on the back. And that's just going to be a nightmare for me to try to make through. I don't have Protect on my Spectrier, so they have a free max flying into that slot. They should be able to just knock out my Spectrier. Take a free KO. The only way I can win this is if my opponent decides to not go over max flying. I get like a Swords Dance off, and then maybe I Rock Slide flinch through them, but even that's going to be tough because the Garchomp is going to outspeed always. If it stays on the field and goes for Dragon Claw rather than switching out, like if they switch into Incineroar here, maybe I can win. But my opponent just stays in with both. Probably smart. The Dragon Claw does go into my Landorus, and that does way too much. Even if I got the Swords Dance off, there's just no way. This game's a wrap. I can't beat his Pokemon, and also my opponent wisely recognizes that they don't even need to kill my Spectrier. They've got a big full health, not full health, but like half health Grimmsnarl, and I think full health Incineroar in the back, so nothing I can do about this at this point. My opponent has thoroughly outplayed me. Celesteela at +2. There is no way I can win. I will outspeed the Celesteela at +1 because Celesteela is a super slow Pokemon. It definitely won't be able to outspeed me. But at this point, there's not really much I can do. I just go for the Shadow Ball and the Garchomp to get a potential damage range. They do go for Earthquake, which is nice for me. I get to see the damage on my Spectrier. I believe that confirmed it was Jolly for me, if I recall correctly, but I expected it to be Jolly anyway, so not really too much of consequence there. And my opponent just takes my Spectrier with Flash Cannon, so that game didn't go so well. And in immediate reflection, you gotta wonder, or actually you don't have to wonder very much, like, I swept him in Game 1, and I did not sweep him in Game 2. Now, what Pokemon did I bring in Game 1 that I did not bring in Game 2? Oh yeah, it was Moltres. So yeah, my adjustment to Lando was stupid as heck. I honestly don't know why I tried that, because half of that game was just trying to figure out how to dodge the Grimmsnarl's Full Incense trick. And yeah, that's stupid. Why would I do that when I could just use Moltres and I don't have to worry about that? Moltres makes this way easier for me. And again, it doesn't seem like they're going to switch things up. I mean, what reason do they have to switch things up? Thundurus doesn't do any better versus Lando. Rillaboom is a potential mix-up on their part. Rillaboom would be a little bit nicer against what I brought there in Game 2. But, I mean, that's about all. So, I do decide here to mix things up. I don't know why I would have thought to lock in Spectrier there. Spectrier hasn't done jack squat all these games. I'm pretty sure I want to lock in Regieleki. Like, I don't know why I would want to lock in my Spectrier. I'm kind of thinking to myself as I'm watching this game back, I'm like, why would I have even considered locking in my Spectrier here? The reason why it would be nice is because Will-O-Wisp is good versus the Garchomp. But yeah, this is way smarter. Just go with Regieleki. Exactly. And so Registeel here could be nice as a late game win con versus Garchomp and versus Celesteela. If I get a Iron Defense up, then it's going to be difficult for them to knock me out very quickly. Because I have clear body, they can't use fake tears on my Registeel, so it's going to be able to take attacks well from the both of their Pokemon, and my Moltres used Max Airstream multiple times in Game 1, so it's likely that my Registeel is going to get speed boosts, which would put it faster than the Incineroar. So my opponent leads the exact same way as they do in Game 2, which makes me very inclined to think that they probably brought the Celesteela and Garchomp in the back again. Not only do I think is it the strongest play, like the strongest Pokemon they have available to them, but yeah, I think it covers a lot of their options. So at this point, I'm thinking about going for the Double Protect or going for the Nasty Plot. Double Protect is hyper safe. What it would do is it would stop Fake Out into Moltres and taunt the Clefairy. And then next turn, my opponent can go for a Parting Shot on my Nasty Plot, limit the amount of damage I'd be able to do. I would prefer to be able to stop this interaction. And so I don't want my Moltres to end up at -1 when I'm maxing, because my opponent has also demonstrated that they're not very inclined to go for max moves into me. And they call my defensive play turn 1. I do go for the Double Protect here, but that's going to be effectively wasted. A Follow Me there would have been fantastic, because I would have been able to follow the Nasty Plot. But my opponent does use Fake Out into Moltres to cover that, so the only punish that I would have had for that would have been to Sing with Clefairy, which has low odds of working, and moreover is somewhat risky, because if they just go for the taunt play, that would put me really far behind. So now, though, I do get a free Nasty Plot, and now technically, again, it's not free. They could max their Celesteela and go for a max Rockfall into my Moltres, and go for like a Flare Blitz into my Moltres, and punish me switching up my Clefairy. However, it is so unlikely that they're going to do that, because not only do they want to they have to respect the pressure of Follow Me, but they also have to respect the pressure of me just again going for something like a Helping Hand Max Airstream. That would be bad for them. So they don't want to just straight up max Rock into my Moltres because of the threat of the Clefairy, primarily, but also because if they hit my weakness policy in the wrong way, then they're going to be in big trouble. So they do Dynamax with their Celesteela, and so I'm thinking, okay, switching my Registeel in is going to be great there. It's going to resist the Celesteela's attacks. Everything but Flamethrower is going to be resisted, and if they have to waste their time going for max Flares into my Registeel, so much the better. So I do go for the Nasty Plot. I'm like, okay, well, maybe they went for a Parting Shot into the Moltres to half cover that play as well. But they do for the Steel Spike into my Registeel. I'm like, okay, well, that wouldn't have actually KO'd the first time. We already saw that my Clefairy was able to live that attack with 1 health. Now, it probably was a damage roll, but they also saw that Max Airstream did under half the Clefairy, so if they've been calculating themselves, they should know that it probably won't KO my Clefairy with combination attack, and this is great because it forces them to go for the Flare Blitz into my Registeel as well. Now, that's not like, you know, the best case scenario. Like, best case scenario would have been like Parting Shot into my Registeel. That would have been epic. But like even a Parting Shot into my Moltres wouldn't have been awful, because then my Registeel is very healthy. But now this is great, because again, in a similar way to Game 1, my Moltres has gotten up a +2 special attack boost with no consequence. And my opponent also didn't get an Airstream boost with their Celesteela there, so I'm going to be winning the Airstream war. Moreover, I'm winning the Dynamax war too, because they Dynamaxed first. And in order to knock out my Registeel here, they have to attack it with Max Flare, which is obviously not super great for them. They're going to be put so far behind. They are in big trouble. If I get my Registeel going, like as an alternate win condition, while my Moltres is still on the field, like they have to attack my Registeel in order to do something. Like if they don't attack my Registeel can win. And if they don't attack my Moltres can win. So I'm kind of pinning them with both immediate offensive pressure and Registeel's pressure of winning in the late game, which is like, I think exactly how you want to play Registeel with this team. You want to be able to pressure them in that way. But my opponent does make a smart mid-ground read, goes for the Max Airstream into my Moltres, which lets them match speeds. My Registeel could outspeed the Celesteela at +2. I feel pretty inclined to go for another Max Airstream this next turn. They're not going to be able to knock out my Moltres with Max Rock, unless I'm crazy, but I'm pretty sure it's not going to be able to. And they don't want to risk it, because again, that would give them a Beast Boost, yada yada yada. So my opponent goes into the Grimmsnarl, and I'm like, okay, this is great. That probably means whatever they have in the back isn't good versus the Moltres right here. So a number of things could be going wrong that would set them far behind. Now, I believe we saw in Game 1 that a +2 Max Airstream was enough to knock out the Grimmsnarl. But what they could be doing, if they brought like Thundurus for some reason, they could be trying to bait me going for a Max Airstream and switching into the Thundurus there. Maybe. I don't know for sure. But if I go for Max Airstream and Body Press as well, that's not too bad. It means that my Registeel is not going to be a very effective pressure mon later on if I don't KO this the correct way. But it's not the end of the world. I'm going to put a little bit of damage on the Celesteela, and a little bit of damage is good damage. So the Celesteela does go for the Max Flare here, and that's fantastic for me. I'm happy to see that. Registeel is going to go down, but again, my Moltres has taken almost no damage. And I still have a turn of Dynamax left. Moreover, they do not. Moreover, because my Moltres is at +2 speed, I'm able to safely go into my Regieleki here. And now I can go for Max Darkness on whatever Pokemon they bring in and Volt Switch on the Celesteela. So they switch into Garchomp, I'm like, okay, this is perfect. I don't think they can win anymore. Because now I go for Max Darkness into the Garchomp. Garchomp will take like 30% through Protect, something like that. I Volt Switch from Celesteela. That's probably going to do like 90% or something like that because of the, like I'm going to drop the Assault Vest. And so then maybe Celesteela will naturally survive that attack. But I go into Clefairy. There's nothing they can do to actually survive that. They actually don't even protect Garchomp, so I'm going to get a knockout on Garchomp. And I'm like, okay, that certainly locks up the game. Because with Garchomp dead, now Regieleki will be able to come in later and go for a second Thunderbolt onto the Celesteela, even if it survives this Volt Switch. And it would also have to survive my Moltres. Like, there's no way it can do all that. And actually, Volt Switch just kills. It just kills him straight up. And so I'm like, okay, well, there you go. Don't have to waste time switching. And so there we go, 2-1 over Jeremy Odena. I think the very clear difference between what I did in Games 2 and 1 and 3 is obvious. I just used my Moltres and I just powered through them. That was very much just a Moltres game, so I think I definitely had the matchup. I'm really surprised I decided to try to switch to Lando in Game 2. Moltres was so good in this game, so this is the first time Moltres got brought in Players' Cup and got really caught off guard by that Max Hurricane being there instead of Max Air Slash, but ended up working out in my favor. And also, just to clarify, just to be perfectly candid, my team sheet also had Hurricane on Arcanine. So my opponents weren't getting gypped there. My opponent knew that I had Hurricane. There was nothing suspicious going on. You could have gone back and checked my team sheet, and it would have said Hurricane. I was just caught off guard because I had made the mistake. But it ended up being a mistake that worked out pretty well for me, so can't complain at all. So with that, I am now 4-1 in the tournament. Stay tuned for the next round of competition.